Hi, I'm Dave Edwards, President and CEO of the Greenville-Spartanburg Airport District. I had the opportunity tonight to provide a presentation to Logistics Manufacturing Association on the development of GSP over the years. So we talked a little bit about the history. We talked a little bit about what's gone on in the last 10 years here at GSP since I came in 2009. And we looked also into the future about our development plans here at GSP, both for passengers as well as cargo, and our land development program, as well as the other lines of business here at GSP that are under our Cerulean Aviation Group. I hope you enjoyed the video. Great to be with you all tonight. Thanks for having me, and hopefully we'll share a little bit of information with you that'll be helpful. We'll give you a little history about the airport, a little bit of where we've been, a little bit of where we're going as we believe here for the future. So can I get an idea? I know folks are in logistics, obviously that's what this is about, but just kind of company-wide, who do we have here? Can maybe, is there a way to go around the room real quick and just so I can get an idea of who's with us tonight?
Woodworking.
Just a couple other folks, maybe, chiming in. Everybody bashful?
Automotive, healthcare.
Okay, all right, all right.
Frisbee and cables.
Okay, very good. Very good. Construction. I think I saw a ZF shirt over here, right? I'm going to maybe touch on something that might hit a little home there with a company you guys have bought. Well, good. I'm going to jump in tonight again. My name is Dave Edwards, President and CEO of the Greenville-Spartanburg Airport District. I've been here about a little over 10 years now, hard to believe, came in 2009, and it's been kind of a wild ride over the last 10 years, and I think you'll see a little bit of why I say that when you see what we've been doing here over the last 10 years. So I want to talk first a little bit about our governance model. This is our mission statement. You know, we're here to support the upstate. I'm not going to read this, but we're here to ensure the best we can that the upstate prospers at the end of the day, that we provide a safe transportation system at affordable prices to our community. And that is not only on the passenger side, which a lot of people think about when they think about GSP, but it is about the cargo side, the freight side, which we are moving a fair amount of freight now, which we'll touch on as well. So a little bit about how we're, again, governed. I have a commission of 6 members. Those members are appointed 3 each by the Spartanburg Legislative Delegation and the Greenville Legislative Delegation. They actually then have to be approved by the governor. There are no term limits, so I have some members that have been on my board now for the better part of 35 years, actually a little more than that. And I think my shortest term member now is around 10 years. So great stability. The Airport Commission sets policy for the airport. So they're absolutely a governance board, a governing board. They do not get into day-to-day aspects of running the airport. They meet 6 times a year and do a great job in really helping us visualize where we're going for the future with the airport. And giving us those policy guidance and budget oversight that they're required to do by our enabling legislation from the state. And we receive no local tax dollars. Back when the airport first was formed, building the new airport, the airport needed to support revenue bonds in order to build the airport. The 2 counties got together in order to put those revenue bond issues in place, but taxing authority was given to the airport in order to help pay for those, but we no longer collect any local taxes at all or receive any local taxes from any of the other governing bodies here in our community or from the state for that matter. So we're fully self-sustaining. I'm responsible for the day-to-day operation, administration, and development of the airport. We have about 220 staff now. When I got here in 2009, we had 85. I'll talk a little bit about why we've grown as much as we've grown, and in particular it's because we've taken on some additional business lines that have required us to staff up to do that. And we're currently going through a pretty significant time in the history of the airport. I talked about those long tenures from our airport board, and many of those folks are going to be finally kind of deciding they're going to step away from our organization here over the next 5 or 6 years. And so we're starting to try to not only succession plan for our team, as we have had a lot of long-time employees, but we also are succession planning for our commission to make sure that we get the right people on our board for the future to help direct where we're going to go. So a quick airport overview. Airport was built in 1962, added the first parking garage here in 1988, upper level concourses in 1989, second parking garage came in 1998. We built the FedEx facility in 2001. Oh, I missed the lengthening of the runway back in the late 90s from 9,000 to 11,000 feet. And BMW had a little something to do with that happening. There's a long story that goes that is behind that that I don't have time to share tonight, but maybe some other time. And then really not a lot happened at the airport, as you can see, between 2001 and 2017, when we finished what we called the Wingspan project, which was the most recent terminal project, $127 million project. Really touched the airport from curb to gate. So we touched every part of the terminal building, demoed significant amounts of the airport at that time completely to the ground, preserved some other parts, and then kind of rebuilt from the inside out, and did that over a 5-year period while still maintaining full operations here at GSP. So it was really a quite a project, kind of like doing open heart surgery and keeping the patient alive and going while it's going on. And then a big event for us happened at the end of this year. In December, we had 50 million passengers actually pass through GSP, or the 50 millionth passenger pass through GSP over its history of existence, which was quite a milestone for us. So I think it says a lot just about what the airport has done to help our community grow here in the upstate. So what do we look like today? As you all know, we're located on the I-85 corridor, easy access, 11,000-foot runway, which really allows us to handle any aircraft in the system today that is flying. 13 gates. We have a little different makeup in how we utilize our gates. A lot of airports will lease a gate to an airline. We don't do that. We have all of our gates in a scenario we call common use, and so we can move a carrier around to any one of our 13 gates to get maximum utilization of our facilities, which benefits us from not necessarily having to build bricks and mortar sooner than we're really fully utilizing the capacity of the airport. I'll talk about this a little bit more with our group Cerulean. We do all of the fueling, aircraft fueling today, and we do ground handling as well. Something that's very unusual for airports here in the U.S., much more prevalent in Europe, as an example, and specifically in places like Germany. So it's something that hasn't been well embraced here in the U.S., but we're doing it today. We do have a federal inspection station here, so we can handle international passenger aircraft. We also have a secondary federal inspection station where we do clear private aircraft coming in from international locations, in particular Mexico and Canada. And then we have a centralized security TSA checkpoint that was done during the project and was a real benefit for us. If you were here prior to the terminal project, you'll remember that we had 2 separate security checkpoints. We actually had people that would get up on the wrong concourse at times because they got a little lost at where they were going, and then they were trying to rush back to get to their airline, and they had to go back out of security and back into security on the other concourse in order to get to their flight, which we had a fair amount of people that would miss flights when that would happen. So here's a layout of the terminal on the outside of our 13 gates. Talked a little bit about Wingspan. Again, $127 million project. About $97 million of that was self-funded by the airport. We funded that with cash. We didn't borrow any money at all for this project. We had about $30 million in grant funding from the federal government. Again, no state or local funds were used for this project, but we could avail ourselves of some federal funding for infrastructure projects, which we did. And and again, no local tax dollars in the project. So this was done in a way that really is unheard of in the industry. And what it enabled us to do was deliver a $127 million project very cost effectively, helping to keep costs down not only to the users of the airport in the sense of the traveling public, but also to the airlines that operate here at GSP, which is very important for us being able to grow air traffic, in particular new destinations, and augment existing destinations with the airlines that we have. So here's a few things. I went back and actually a little while ago looked at some before and after pictures, and it was kind of shocking actually. It was to go back and take a look at them, but you know, in this larger picture, if you looked at the face of the terminal back in 2009 when I arrived, it was a solid concrete wall. And we completely tore that down and put a glass facade in place. We had a set of escalators going up and down at that time, one set with one single elevator from the ticketing area up to the second level to get folks from ticketing to the security checkpoint. And now we have 2 escalator cores. We have 4 elevators getting you up and down. So just the movement of vertical transportation was expanded immensely. And what you see in the bottom right-hand corner here is a view of the security checkpoint queuing area, and that's that centralized security checkpoint location. Airside Garden, which we tend to be well known for, not only here in the upstate, but also around the industry. We're the only airport here in the U.S. that right now allows outside access in a secure environment like this. We rebuilt this again as a part of the Wingspan project, or just after really the Wingspan project ended, invested another $1.2 million in order to refurbish the Airside Garden. It's a great amenity for us here at GSP. And the other thing we did when I arrived in 2009, we had most of our concessions were pre-security. So as a part of the project, we wanted to move our concessions post-security. In the advent of 9/11 and all the security requirements, it became difficult for passengers to really, again, get through security timely. So most airports were moving towards having their all of their concessions, or the majority of their concessions, post-security. We did that, and at the same time we were able to augment this with really a world-class program in the concessions that we've been able to bring to the table. So for an airport our size, to have something like a Wolfgang Puck, the kitchen, there's only 2 airports in the entire U.S. That have that particular concept for Wolfgang Puck, and that's GSP and Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. So we brought in Chick-fil-A. We were able to bring in some local flavor in RJ Rockers, as well as Thomas Creek Grill as well. And so we felt really good about this program. Dunkin' Donuts, Chick-fil-A. That translated in 2018 to us winning a national award in our class. You can see the other nominees in that class of Calgary, Edmonton, Louisville, and Portland International Airport. And we won for Best Concession Program Design in 2018. We backed that up in 2019 and won again the award nationally for Best Overall Concessions Program in the U.S. for, again, our size airport category. And you can see the competition that we were up against. A little larger airports, actually, than GSP. And when you start looking at Pittsburgh and Dallas, Raleigh, Durham, and Austin, all larger than what we are, but deemed to be in our class of airport. We also, in 2018, in October, a first, again, for an airport this size, we opened the MAG Escape Lounge, which is a common VIP lounge here at GSP. Never done before in an airport, again, of our size. This is a concessionaire for us, so they actually are paying to be here in the terminal, which is good for us, and it's been an overwhelming success. We currently have over 100 people a day that are frequenting the MAG Escape Lounge, so it's a great amenity for the business travelers in and out of GSP. A couple more pictures of that. And then just this past November, we opened our really what's probably going to be our last concession for a little while here at GSP, a Vino Volo Market Bar. We were the first airport in the U.S. for them to roll out this concept of a market bar, so they actually have a relatively extensive food and beverage menu in addition to what they're known for, which is wine. They are in several other airports around the country, but again, not with this particular concept. So this is another great opportunity that we have to provide a higher level of customer service to our travelers. I'm going to shift to some key airline support facilities away from the terminal program, and just so you get an understanding of the things that we try to do. Like in this case, PSA Airlines, who flies for American Airlines, needed a maintenance facility for their regional jets, both their 700 series and their 900 series, and we were able to provide them with a hangar facility here on airport. And you can see their aircraft in here. We completely refurbished the facility back, now it was probably almost 3 years ago that they moved into the facility. What this did for us when this was brought to bear is it really upped the level of reliability of the aircraft flying in and out of GSP for American Airlines, having this maintenance base locally. Because what it means is we get the aircraft that come in at night for American in that particular class, CRJ 700 and 900. They get towed off the gate, they go over to the maintenance facility, they get their maintenance taken care of, they come back on the gate first thing in the morning, fully fresh, with recent maintenance, and then go out and fly. So it's really put us in a great position to fix some reliability issues we had with some of our aircraft movements, in particular to Charlotte over the years. And so this was great for us to do. Started out with about 40, 45 employees, and they're now up to 100. This is about a 45,000 square foot facility, and they're wanting about an 80,000 square foot facility as they want to continue to grow with us. So we're excited to continue to have discussions with them. So I mentioned this other group that we stood up back in January 1st of 2017. We stood up a group called Cerulean Aviation, and at the time, just prior to that, we had a private sector, what we call a fixed base operator, that did all of the general aviation activity here at GSP, and hangaring, all the aircraft, GA aircraft servicing, all of the related fueling for GA aircraft, and then they also did all the commercial fueling. That contract was coming to an end. We discussed with that operator how we might continue to keep them here at GSP, just could not get there on a negotiation, so we decided to step in and take it on ourselves. So again, in January of 2017, we stood up Cerulean Aviation and took over all of those operations, which really meant 3 different new business lines for us. It was a commercial fueling business line, fixed base operator, general aviation business line, and then we also stood up an air cargo handling group that does all of the major air cargo handling here, as well as a fair amount of build break that happens here for air cargo here on premises at GSP. We went out trying to figure out what a good name was, and some people have a hard time, even pilots, when they see the name in their charts, they don't quite know where to go or how to pronounce it, but it happened to be a color in the crayon box, the crayon box, and so we thought it was a nice mesh of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the blue sky, and it just so happened that GSP has blue in its logo, so it seemed to seemingly fit well for us moving forward as a name. And it was a name that wasn't taken out there, so it was kind of a unique thing. We did have a little scare, I think about a year after or so, might have only been 6 months of picking the name and being able to tell the crayon box story. Crayon announced they were going to eliminate a color. And we thought it was going to be this one, but it happened to be some other blah color rather than this color. But so I mentioned, started our operations in January 2017. We had to stand up a new fuel farm at that time, so we invested $2.5 million in a new 150,000 gallon fuel farm, brought that online. As you can see in the first year of sales, we grew our fuel sales by 35%. Actually, we more than doubled fuel sales in just a little less than 18 months. So when we took over, Stevens Aviation at the time was pumping about 10 million gallons a year, and we moved over 20 million gallons a year within about 18 months. So it was a huge win for us. From a growth perspective, we had some organic growth during that time. We stood up some new cargo service during that time, which really helped us. We also brought back operators that had been based here, and were still based here, but were not fueling here because of the cost of the fuel at the time. After we took it over, they came back and they started buying fuel here again at GSP, because we really had two reasons for taking it over. We wanted to provide a high level of customer service that was critical to us at competitive prices. We always said we're not going to be the lowest, we're not going to be the highest. We want to be competitive, but we want to provide that extreme high level of customer service to our customers out of the FBO facility. We followed up, taking over the operation immediately with building 50,000 square feet of new hangar space for general aviation aircraft. One of those was occupied by Michelin as their corporate hangar location. The other was a little over 30,000 square foot, what we call a bulk hangar for bulk storage of aircraft. Following the construction of those two hangars, we became 100% full with hangar space. We have zero space to accommodate any other aircraft on the general aviation side here at GSP. So now we are in the midst of programming for the next phase of development for general aviation, which initially is going to be about a $4.5 million site project in order to get the site ready to build additional hangars, and that design process is underway now. And that worked a little bit into the master plan for construction of new hangars. And then we've been back over time and renovating the older hangars. And we have, I think, what'll be our last hangar now, which is about another 45,000 square foot hangar facility that will invest almost $4 million here in the next year to 18 months to bring it up to where we believe it needs to be to provide that high level of customer service to our users in the GA area. Talked about the cargo side. So back in November of 16, we had been working on this for a long time with several operators to try to bring BMWs, in particular at the time it was inbound, their imports directly into GSP, because those imports had been going into Huntsville, Alabama. And we had some opportunities back in 2011 to do some emergency charters for BMW for some transmissions. That kind of played into at least them understanding our capabilities here at GSP to handle that kind of activity. And it took us almost, as you can see here, another 5 years of trying to work with folks that would actually compete for that business and BMW in order to finally have a tender that was secured by an operator, Senator International, to stand up twice weekly all cargo service to Europe with a 747-400. That's been extremely successful. We've had as many as daily flights, sometimes even more than daily, 7 or 8 flights a week going over Europe. We've had some flights also going down to Mexico, QRO Mexico, for BMW as well. We had the longest flight out of GSP here not too long ago, going to South Africa. I can't remember the total distance, but it was actually showed up on some records on the cargo side. I flew from here to South Africa, which was good to get us in the news. Right now, we're doing about 4 or 5 flights a week with this operation, and we're working with some other operators to stand up some additional international service that we hope will come to fruition sometime here in 2020. So you can see where cargo is gone. You can see from the time that 2016 time frame up here on this bar chart of how much we grew once that international service started to Europe. Had a significant impact for us. Continued to grow through 2018. 2017 and 2018 were 2 of the best years in air cargo ever. Just tremendous growth globally in air cargo movements. Last year in 2019, it was off globally, partly because of the tariff issues that were going on, partly because of some overcapacity in the market as well. But we fared a lot better than the national numbers. So we were down about 3.5%, 3.7% in cargo traffic for 2019, but that was well under the double-digit numbers that on a global basis air cargo was down. So we fared very well, actually. We did open this last year, last fall, September. We cut the ribbon on a new cargo facility. We built cargo apron, this blue and green area, so that allows us to accommodate 3 747-800 aircraft simultaneously now here at GSP. We were very constrained previously in our ability to take on more cargo activity before this facility was built. Along with this, we built a 110,000 square foot warehouse facility, air cargo facility. Again, it opened in September. This is still a rendering of that building. With our operation with Cerulean, we occupy about 50% of that building. The other 50% is leased to Center International for their operations here at GSP. So it's been a great success and really provided us with the capabilities that we needed again to grow air cargo here at GSP. And then if you all remember back to a little event that happened a year or so ago, the Tryon International Equestrian Games. GSP moved 550 horses for the games over a 2-week period of the games occurring. Largest single horse movement ever in the world. And we handled it right here at GSP. So again, we were able to receive some very positive international news and on that, and that continues to garner us additional interest from entities out there around the globe as to what's happening here at GSP. So a little bit about airport traffic. So you can see the nonstop destinations we have today, 19 destinations, really good service overall for an airport this size. It doesn't mean we're not trying to secure more cities. We are. In particular, we're right now targeting Boston is a good example for us, probably our largest underserved or not served nonstop market that we have out there. But there's a few others, Minneapolis, St. Paul, that we're looking at, and trying to go further west on a more routine basis, in particular Las Vegas, Phoenix, and a few other locations. So we're staying on top of trying to continue to grow the air service, but at the same time, that also means we look to augment existing service, and what that means usually is larger airplanes. We try to get larger airplanes into the market on existing routes. Here's what our airline market share looks like today. As you can see, Delta is the largest carrier with American close behind them today, and then we have the rest of the carriers, United in third, and Southwest in fourth, and Frontier and Allegiant. Frontier and Allegiant still serve mostly leisure travelers here in and out of GSP. They tend to have less than daily service. So they're not good for the business traveler, necessarily getting to where they want to go because there's just not enough frequency. But they're good for the leisure traveler that just wants to get somewhere inexpensively. So they do provide a good service for us. Here's a little bit about what happened in 2019 for us on seat capacity, and I'll just focus on that. Operations were up as well, but we really measure how many people we can put through the airport by this number of seats coming in and out of the airport. And you can see on average for 2019, we averaged 16% increase in overall seats here at GSP. When you take that and translate it to another factor that we use, which is load factor, how many of those seats are actually being absorbed across the board in each market, you can see that our average load factor is about 79%, which effectively means when you get to 80%, load factors, it means you have several flights that are 100% full. And those of you that may fly in and out of GSP, you will have seen that. Most of the flights in and out here, especially Monday through Friday, are pretty packed. Hard to find a seat. Ultimately, what that meant for us in 2019 is we grew from roughly 2.3 million annual passengers to, as you can see, over 2.6 million annual passengers. So roughly a 12.7% growth. So we had a 16% increase or so in seats. We grew at 12.7%. So we really did a good job overall of absorbing that additional seat capacity that was put into the market. And while we won't necessarily see those same kind of growth numbers as we move into 2020, we think we're still going to have a strong single-digit growth year in 2020, the way the year is starting off, and just what our barometer tends to be the parking. So when parking's filling up, we know we're doing well, and parking's already been filling up early this year, in particular Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. This is our top 15 domestic city pairs. New York is pretty normal for a lot of cities around the country to have service to and have it be their #1 market. Here's our top 15 international cities. Canada is a big market for us, a lot of automotive up in Canada, and we're continuing to try to stand up nonstop service with Air Canada to Toronto to get us not only to Toronto but also to all of those interior locations throughout the various provinces in Canada, as well as open ourselves up to a global gateway in the Toronto airport, which through there you can get anywhere in the world, which would be very advantageous for us. Some recent air service announcements: increased frequencies to LaGuardia Airport in New York with Delta. United started daily Denver service, but that was on top of 3 or 4 weekly from Frontier flying to Denver. So that was, but this is daily, so it works better for the business traveler. Started 2 a day down to Miami International, which was great service for us again. We didn't have service to Miami prior to that. With Southwest Airlines, they started back, I'll say in this case, Baltimore Washington Airport, which they did serve for when they first came to GSP back in 2011. And then they changed a little bit of their flight patterns and were flying everything through Atlanta. But it's nice to see them bring back a new city to GSP, so we're happy about that. And then this one over here again, 4 weekly for Frontier to Denver and 3 weekly to Orlando International, and some seasonal service to Las Vegas. So some really good service happening in 2019 for us, and we hope to be able to make some similar announcements here in 2020. So a little bit about land development here at GSP. So, you know, I talked about a few things. It used to be, I said we had a 3-legged stool here at GSP. We did typical passenger activity, and then we did some land development activity, and then we did some cargo related items. And we've broadened that with Cerulean, again, now to be commercial fueling and to be the FBO operation, and then really extend those cargo operations even more so into us doing a lot of that work ourselves. But land development for us is really important because it allows us to develop airport property, some of it for aviation purposes, but some of it for what we call non-aviation purposes, and help in the upstate of bringing new business and jobs to the community, hopefully higher paying jobs that increase the overall per capita income for folks here in the upstate. So we finished this, what we call GSP 360 back in 2012. We looked at the complete 3,700 acres of GSP and said, you know, what was going to be the highest and best use for that property. And as you can see by this color coding, some of this has been slated for light industrial, some of it has been slated for aviation, some of it has been slated for retail across this map, and that's really what the colors indicate. I know what you can't see, the small block down there. But the first project that we really kicked off and got started was up in this right-hand corner. And it happened back in the really just about the time we were going through this, 2012, 2013, when the port of Charleston decided they wanted to set up the inland port in Greer. We owned some of the property that they needed in order to do that. We worked out an arrangement with the Ports Authority to sell them roughly 66 acres of airport property to stand up the inland port. And then right next to the inland port, we stood up the GSP International Logistics Park. And I'll talk through that a little bit. And that's been widely successful for us here. These were all the various uses for all the tracks that we went through. This is track A, which is our largest track, sits right off the north end of the current runway and across State Road 101, has 750 acres almost of property in there, probably only about 450 that's actually developable, but you can see we're already mapping out and laying out that development site. We have leased a piece of ground, a piece of land to BMW down here on the corner for an accessories facility that they're going to build down there and some storage of some vehicles. So hopefully we'll see that go into construction here in the next 6 to 12 months, we think. Here's a few of the buildings back over in the GSP International Logistics Park. Centerpoint Properties built a couple of buildings in the park. Well, actually they built 4, I say a couple. They built this building, ProTrans. And then our most recent building over the park was built by Panattoni, a little over 500,000 square feet of building. So we have now in the park, since it was started in 2013, there's about 1.8 million square feet of warehouse cross-dock facility in the logistics park. All of those entities that are located in there and utilizing the park as a location for what they're doing, all have an affinity to need to be close to the inland port. And that was one of the requirements, is because we maintain the interior of the logistics park as GSP held roadways, even though they're technically public because we're a public agency. We didn't turn them over to another governing body like the state or local city. That allows us some advantages with CDL drivers. You don't have to have a CDL license to be able to dray containers through the park over to the inland port, which helps some of the operators save some money in the park. This is another site. The logistics park is actually on this side of Victor Hill Extension. We have another 50 to 70 acres on the other side of that. That's prime for another development of roughly 500,000 to 700,000 square feet. And we continue to take interest from multiple parties on that development side as well. So I think we'll, in the main park itself today, we only have really 2 sites left. We have an expansion option site for Panettone that could build out about another 250,000 square feet. We have one other site that's about 150,000 square feet. So when we're done, we'll have roughly 2.5 to 3 million square feet within the park or directly adjacent to the park. That's all logistics warehouse facility. Some other development that we're programming and planning. This is on the west side of the airport. This is aviation development. So we're looking to build out additional what we call like that PSA facility that I mentioned, a maintenance repair overhaul facility, MRO for short. We're looking at some of that on the west side, 112 acres, flat land over there ready for development. We're just looking for the right tenant to site there. We're also developing an aerospace park. So down on the corner of State Road 80 and State Road 14, we've laid out an aerospace park that we're going to try to get under development on infrastructure here. Again, hopefully within the next 12 to 24 months. So we're trying to move forward with that, doing our due diligence right now on the development of that site. In and around the cargo facilities that we just completed constructing here back in September, we have roughly 160 acres in there. Again, direct airfield access, close to State Road 101. These are all cargo related facilities, so the plan gives us the ability to continue to expand our cargo capacity here well into the future and supporting the logistics need from an air cargo perspective well into the future. And then out on fronting I-85, we have roughly a 250 acre site that we've slated for retail, corporate office, and hotel. So we are looking for the right tenants and/or tenants in this particular location. Would love to see some regional or national corporate headquarters locate on this site. It's got great visibility, obviously, to the interstate where it's located today, and is really a prime development site for somebody wanting that visibility. And then I mentioned that PSA wanted more space here at GSP in order to accommodate their growing operation for the maintenance, repair, and overhaul business. And so on the south end of our runway and on the same side where the terminal is, we've slated to be able to build 3 additional MRO facilities in that location. And you can see the size of those facilities up here. 69 acre site. We can build anything from 73,000 to 111,000 square feet hangar facilities and maintenance facilities on that site. And this gives you a little idea. Here's the current terminal, and this is just this was actually an animation that I just cut a picture out of, so I'm probably not doing it justice, but this would be the development site for that MRO facility. So a pretty significant development for us going forward that, again, is going to help us secure a better level of service here at GSP from a passenger standpoint for our customers. So we just finished up an airport master plan. That's a little different than the land use master plan. We do a strategic business plan. We have a landscape master plan. We have all of these other plans we do here at the airport. But the one that is governed and we are required to do by the Federal Aviation Administration is this airport master plan. We have to update this about every 7 to 10 years, and it goes out typically for FAA purposes 20 years. We actually went out 40 years with our plan and our look when we did our forecasting. But we have to do this in order to avail ourselves of some of that federal grant money that I mentioned we received for the terminal project. So if we fail to do this, then we can't compete for that money. So we just went through this, completed it. Here's what part of that plan looks like. A lot of lines up here on this drawing. And but it only really deals with aviation-related projects. So everything that you see up here in kind of this goldenrod color is existing. Everything else you see, and everything you see in light gray is existing apron. Everything you see in blue or the dark gray are all planned facilities for the future. And so you can see there's a lot of planned facility expansion for us here at GSP, and I'm going to touch on a few of those items going forward. So one is, and hopefully you can see this, it wasn't the best drawing I had. We've been pushed on parking in the last year, in particular, out of parking on several occasions, I should say almost. Had to actually stand up a temporary overflow lot at one point in order to accommodate parking. So we immediately, I say immediately, last January, moved on approval to move forward with a $17–18 million project to expand surface parking here at GSP. So one of those lots is a public lot, 1,500 spaces. The other lot is an employee lot, 600 spaces. This is the main aviation parkway coming in today. We're going to be building a roundabout just as you're kind of getting down towards the terminal location. And then this will be this is a future roadway that's being built for access to this lot. And that roadway will then connect down to our existing economy lot, what we call Economy B today. And then that will become the primary entrance and exit from those lots, the new lot and the existing lot. And then ultimately, this road will end up coming around in our master plan. If I go back to this drawing, you'll see that that road is in here. Here's that parking lot envisioned in the master plan. This road comes around and actually feeds the other side of the terminal. Eventually also branches off to come over to the general aviation area. So this is the first phase of the long-term roadway plan that's going to be developed to accommodate the growth here at GSP. That's under construction now. Should be completed in October of this year. Once we finish those projects, we're going to start into a $75 million parking garage. That's going to accommodate 750 new public parking spaces, 750 what we call ready return spaces for our rental car companies here. We're going to move all of the rental car operations out of Garage A into this new garage. You can see on the front of this has a whole new customer service center for the rental car operators as well as the rental car customers. It's going to be a terrific facility going forward, really provide us with the ability to grow in the future. Here's a little visual of the inside of that. It'll be very much a takeoff of the finishes and the things we've done here inside the terminal as a part of Wingspan, in part because we want it to feel seamless. We don't want it to look like it was something else that was built at a different time. And frankly, this facility was really the ribbon was cut in 2017, so it's not like it's dated at this time anyway. So we think this is going to be a great facility for the customer. We're currently under construction on a new fire station. This is underway. Actually, they were starting to erect steel here in the last week or so. This is replacing our fire station that was built in 1962. So pretty old fire station, not a lot of amenities in it. Served the purpose for obviously a long time for us, but our firefighters here at GSP were owed a state-of-the-art facility, which we're very happy to be able to deliver to them. This is about an $8 million facility that's under construction right now, but will provide us with ample capacity to provide for both our aircraft rescue and firefighting equipment, as well as the structural firefighting equipment that we have to have in order to deal with the buildings that we have here on airport property. And so just to that end, some folks don't know that we do have our own fire department. They are our own staff. They do work for the district. We also have our own police department. They work for the district as well. They are actually sworn officers of the state, more like state troopers. So they have a lot more jurisdictional area that they can cover than your typical county sheriff and or city police officer. But again, we have both of those entities staffed ourselves here at the district. Something else that's happening here at GSP, you'll probably hear about and read about in the next 30 days or so. We're issuing an RFP for a hotel here at GSP. This particular hotel will be slated to go just outside this building, just down a little bit north from us. We're very excited about this. We've met with 5 or 6 hoteliers to date, and there's a strong interest in this particular project. It'll have some conference room space in it, so folks coming in and just needing a quick place to come in, stay, have a quick meeting and get out. We're going to provide that capability. Or folks that have that bright and early 5:15 departure in the morning that want to get to the airport and maybe save a few minutes of sleep can stay here. We'll be able to stay here at this hotel and be close by to get into the terminal building. So we're excited about this project. It will be developed by a private developer. Again, we'll be out on the street with an RFP here in the next 30 days, and hopefully we'll get some good responses back and be able to make that selection here by summer of this year and get this project moving forward. Here's our rendering of what we think it may look like. So I have a few qualifiers that in the RFP that have to go out that are key for me. It has to have a swimming pool on the roof, and it has to have a rooftop bar. So those are, the rest of it, they can do what they want with the rooms, but we want a place that is kind of an icon for people to come to. I had the fortunate opportunity to head up to New York this last summer and visited the new TWA Hotel at JFK. Great facility. They did a wonderful job. It had the swimming pool and a rooftop bar, and we just said we got to have one of those. So hopefully it'll become an event location as well for us here, overlooking the airfield, watching airplanes take off and land here at GSP, and it'll be a great opportunity for people to come out and have dinner at the hotel, be able to come up and have a different experience here at GSP that they can't have today. And this is a possible automated transit system that we're talking about. So I've been discussing this here at GSP since 2013. Visited Heathrow Airport, been to Abu Dhabi, been to Guadalajara, Mexico to look at these systems. What we want to try to do is look at connecting our parking lots, and in particular our surface lots, in an automated fashion. This is just giving you a little visual of what that could look like potentially with those automated vehicles. Actually, this lot right now is our economy, what we call economy A, that you're seeing out there with a few cars parked in it. But it would be effectively, could be a small pod system that could accommodate 4 folks in luggage, could be a little larger, what we call a GRT system, a group rapid transit system that might hold up to 10 people. But something we're very excited about. We're working with a company that ZF recently purchased called To Get There out of the Netherlands, and they've been working on projects, and they've had this a project, autonomous vehicle running in Rivium in the Netherlands for some time. They've built the PRT system in Masdar City in Abu Dhabi, which I visited. They have a Blue Waters project going on in the UAE as well, in Dubai. So we think this is a great opportunity to try to deliver something a little different, a little high tech, something that as we try to do here at GSP, you wouldn't see at an airport this size. So we really try to be a little bit forward thinking and leaning forward in the things that we're trying to do here, and this fits well into that. So this is something that we're going to continue to try to move forward on and trying to find the right way to deliver it, both financially and from a construction standpoint. But I maintain some optimism that we're going to be able to get this done and implement this sometime in the next 3 to 5 years. So I covered a few of these projects, just kind of going on what our next 5 years looks like, excluding really that ATN project. And we talked about the firefighting station, public parking garages, additional expansion to air cargo apron, expansions to our fixed space operation, general aviation, some of our internal facilities buildings we need to expand, the surface parking lot expansion, which is underway, runway, taxiway rehabilitation projects, terminal expansion project. We just kicked off a planning study this month for the next phase of terminal expansion here at GSP. I anticipate that by 2022 we will be under construction on that project, which will, if I'm not trying to get ahead of the planning study too far, I think that will translate to adding 5 gates onto Concourse B out here, adding a second bag claim, which will in part be in the area that you're sitting in today, and then add some additional concessions and some other service capabilities as a part of that project. And then we actually are in the acquisition of a couple of fire trucks, and we have another fuel farm expansion ahead of us. We have gotten down to typically where we have a 2-day supply on hand of fuel, which isn't enough. We want to have 4 or 5-day supply on hand just because of the time it takes in order to settle fuel once it's delivered. which means we need to expand our fuel farm by 150,000 gallons of fuel, and that fuel farm expansion will happen here. So as you can, we basically got another $200 million that we plan to invest in the next 3 to 5 years in GSP, and that excludes maybe some of the private development that we see happening here in that time frame as well. And then a little bit about just economic impact. I need to give you a little maybe history on this. When I came in 2009, we were recruiting Southwest Airlines and we did an economic impact study. And at that time, the airport supported about 3,500 jobs in total and had about a $377 million annual economic impact. Fast forward to looking at 2018, and you can see the numbers. Almost 15,000 jobs are supported by the airport. 2.9 billion now in total annual economic impact. And a large part of this is part of our land development program. So if you look at the actual economic impact study, about 1.2 million, maybe 1.3 million of that 2.9 million is directly related to our land development program here at GSP and the jobs and the investment that has created for our community. The other roughly 1.5 million is related to aviation operations, both passenger and cargo. So we think we're doing all we can to help support economic impact here in the community in a positive way, and helping to support jobs and generate tax base that allows other things to be done here in our communities, like hopefully take care of roads and a few other things that we all need taken care of. But as you can see, when you look at a single jet, 120-seat jet with a 70% load factor, every new jet that we can bring in daily of that configuration, jet 365 days a year, so it's here for the entire year, generates $27 million in annual economic impact. So every flight that we can grow to a new nonstop destination, or every flight we can add, has a very significant and positive economic impact on our community. And with that, I'll happy to take any questions. I finished the formal presentation, but yeah, I'm here for you. Yes?
Two.
Sure.
How do you get that fuel?
Today it's all trucked in.
Like just on normal?
On the typical fuelers that you see running across the road, that's correct. Yeah, yeah. So we take.
One of them to fill up that farm you have.
It takes a lot to fill up the farm, and every time just you take that out one step further. So they deliver to the farm, and then we take the fuel out of the farm into our fuel trucks to go onto the aircraft apron. And a single 747-400, like for Center, that's flying, takes 25,000 gallons in an uplift. You can't really get it here by rail. There's a pipeline down in Belton, and we've talked at times about whether or not what it would take to extend the pipeline here to GSP. The fuel volumes, just even though they seem that they are growing and they're large for us, they're not large enough to support a pipeline connection.
I'd like to get a gallon of that, run that in one of my Camaros. What's the average time? I saw all your metrics, which were great. Do you guys, what's the average time a flyer spends in the airport? Do you have that metric?
It kind of depends. I mean, I will tell you, we have our savvy business flyers that still try to show up at the last minute because we're so convenient to get through. They became a little challenged a few years ago when we were starting to fill up the parking garages. It's why in the parking garages we put a system in that's a red-green light system. If you haven't been in the parking garages, that lets you know if there's parking spaces available or not and where they are in the garage itself. To try to take some of that anxiety away. We also rolled out valet parking here a couple of years ago, which the business travelers are availing themselves of at higher and higher degrees. We've had to, over the last 2 or 3 years, we doubled the number of valet spaces in the first 6 months. We now just doubled them again from an availability standpoint for parking. So it really varies. We get other folks that like to get here early, so they want to get here 2 hours early, hour and a half to 2 hours early, make sure that they're comfortably through security checkpoint. They get a little time to spend either at Wolfgang Puck, Chick-fil-A, or go over to the lounge and relax a little bit before they get on their plane. So I don't have a good answer for you on that. We are going to do some things in the terminal I guess kind of that big brother stuff where we're going to track folks a little bit going forward. So a year from now, I might have some better answers on that as we're able to track some folks from the time they come in the door to the time they get on the airplane.
Yeah, because I'm an operations manager and managing the flow time, but that could be a selling point to the business flyer, be like from time you drive onto our property and time you're onto a plane, you know.
Well, there's no question. I mean, you hit a great point. We do think it's an advantage that we have. We're hoping, in particular, Charlotte, who historically we have leaked what we call, that's our technical term for losing passengers out of our market catchment area over to Charlotte. We really want them to make it bad at the Charlotte airport. So it's so for outbound passengers. So as they're working through the front of the terminal over there, you know, they got this $600 billion project that they're $600 million project, excuse me, that they're working on over there. That's going to go on for the next 5 years. And the front curb over at Charlotte is going to be a mess, and we're happy about that. So it's a good thing. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I got 2 questions. One on that more distant economy lot
Mm-hmm.
we're working on, is that looks too far to walk. So how does that relate to your automated transit system, or is there an interim gap where you have to have diesel buses carrying people from there up to the terminal?
Sure. 2 things on that. It does fit into our overall long-term plan to try to have that automated transit system to that location. But when we brought on Economy Lot A not a year ago, fall, it was originally intended to be an overflow lot. And because we grew so quickly in fall of 18, we had to go ahead and make that immediately almost a permanent economy lot. When we did that, we stood up a shuttle bus operation here. So that's been running now for about the last year. We're continuing to try to improve on that. We've added some buses. We're improving on the headways. There's actually an app now that we have that you can go find on the GSP website, where you can actually look on the app and see where the shuttle buses are. And we're rolling out displays at the actual pickup locations in the actual parking lots that will have a display as how many minutes it will be before the next shuttle gets there. So we're trying to, in the interim, we had to do something in order to connect the lots. And now it runs, you know, we didn't want to have a dis level of service being provided to the various lots. So that shuttle bus runs also to the previous economy lot, which we now call Economy Lot B, which was one that people are used to walking from for several years.
That second question was, in 2018, I saw an article where some non-hub airports that were outlying or just that were serving the hub airports with traffic were trying to create access, and I think it was in Pennsylvania maybe, or upstate New York, where we were trying to bring more traffic from the public into the airport and create a positive relationship with the public by having a pathway parallel to security to bring them out into like that garden equivalent in those airports, where they could, families could bring their kids, they could be traffic into restaurants, maybe. We've looked into that. I think there's at least 2, there may be 3 airports in the country that have put in place a program where folks, the general public, can come out to the airport. They can be vetted through a process and get a gate pass, essentially, or a pass to get through security checkpoint to be able to go either eat at the restaurants, get out into the secure area. Most of them have limited it to so many people a day, so they might let 100 people a day do that, up to 100 people a day, and it's between certain hours in the day. We almost rolled that out a year ago, and we pulled back a little bit. There's some cost involved. We were trying to just evaluate whether it made sense for us. We tend to be very business-minded here at GSP, so did it have an ROI on it or not? It probably has an ROI on it from a public relations standpoint, but not from a pure dollar and cents standpoint. Yes, sir.
How difficult was it to handle the scheduling of the gates, since y'all don't have them assigned to specific airlines and y'all flip-flop in that?
Yeah, well,
They are, as I mentioned, they are what we call common use gates. While we were doing the terminal project in particular, it was extremely important because we had gates out of service, gate locations out of service. So we really needed to be able to maximize the use of the gates that were remaining in order to accommodate all the traffic. Today, and kind of where we're situated, they are still common use, but they kind of act like what we call a preferential gate. So Delta Airlines, as an example, typically is on gates B2, B3, and B4. American Airlines is on A1, A2, and A3. And then you've got Southwest on A4, United on A6 and A8. And then Allegiant and Frontier typically are operating off of A7, A9. And then our overflow gate for some of the flights with American and with United is A5. So predominantly they stay in that, operating off of those gates today. But as an example, if we have, weather delays or impacts from mechanicals where we have more flights coming in at one time than originally anticipated, the common use equipment gives us the ability to take Delta, who might normally be operating off of, the B concourse, and put them on an A gate in order to be able to get the plane in and out. So
what's your future vision on the international part? Because I know most of your international is mainly freight, so.
it is, all today.
So, I mean, when do you guys expect to actually start doing passenger flights?
Well, we had hoped that was going to start with Air Canada to Toronto. I know it's a trans-border, but it's still international. So we're still hopeful that has some possibilities here in the next year or two, just depending on what's happening in the market overall. What is tough for us is we could stand up international service to a couple of times a week to Europe, potentially. Cancun is on the target for us. It might be a good way for us to get into the international market as a leisure destination going forward. We're talking to some carriers about that right now. Part of our struggle, however, is CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. I'll give you an example. We just had a carrier request. They have to request a CBP, what we call landing rights, in order to operate in and out of GSP. And CBP has to approve that. And we had a carrier that requested to serve Cancun from February through August. And CBP denied the rights because they said they didn't have enough staff to work the flights. So we are up against a little bit of that staffing issue with the federal government as we move forward, something that we are trying to get resolved here locally in the upstate. Our CBP office here, the entire CBP office in the upstate is comprised of 5 people, and that includes the port director here. And that's just not enough to cover all the bonded warehousing stuff that they have to do, our current cargo operations that they have to do. We're already under a special contract with CBP on a reimbursable agreement that the majority of our cargo flights today with Senator come in after hours from their standpoint, which is between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday. And our flights typically are operating later than that in the evening and operating on the weekends. So we actually have to pay CBP to come out and work those flights. And we'll more than likely have to do the same in order to get the proper staffing in order to staff the Federal Inspection Station for passenger activity. Yes, sir.
Earlier you were talking about expanding to other locations, so Boston I think was on your list. What's the airport's role in expanding to another location, as it is ultimately the airline's decision, right?
Absolutely. A couple things there. Not only on expanding, but I always get the question usually asked about airfares. Well, why can't you get airfares down? We have no say in that. That's all driven by the airlines. And although I can say that when I came here in 2009, we were out of the top 100 airports in the U.S., we were in the top 5 of the highest cost airports for travel in the country. Now we're just middle of the pack. We're just we're in that 45th to 50th kind of level. And still against Charlotte in our top 50 city pair markets, when we compare those, we are 7 to 8% less in airfare on average than flying out of Charlotte. Doesn't mean you're not going to find a cheaper fare out of Charlotte. It just means that if you look kind of at that point in time at the stats, we tend to be 7 to 8% less than they are. Our role is really in talking to carriers. They have the same data that we have. So we all use Department of Transportation data that's collected from a 10% ticket sample that Department of Transportation does. Airlines have access to that. We have access to it. So we can't, we share the same numbers, but they already have the numbers. So what we really have to convince them of is what's happening in our community. Why is this community different than the other 50 communities around the country that are wanting additional air service or new air service to their community? Because, the thing about an aircraft, it's an aluminum tube flying through the sky, and it's a mobile asset. It can be anywhere. So what we have to show is that if we stand up a new route, that it can be profitable quickly. So that means not only are the number of people there, is the yield, the margin in the right place for them to operate out of GSP. The good thing for us is we have a strong business market. So when you look at the yields that the airlines generate out of this market comparatively to where I spent 18 years of my career in Florida, Florida are very low yield markets. They're more driven by tourism. They tend to be also longer haul, which tends to drive down yield as well because it's you're spreading that what you're making over a longer distance, a number of available seat miles. So we're really selling them on the community and what's happening in our community, how many businesses are coming into the community, what the diversity of our businesses here on the community, what the population growth is, how local government is supportive of growth and wants to see growth and good growth in our community. And then from our standpoint directly as the airport, what are we doing for the airlines that helps them be more cost effective? So we have a thing in the industry called a cost per enplanement. It's basically how much does it cost an airline and what they pay the airport divided by the number of passengers, number of enplanements, the boardings that they have going through the airport. And we are extremely competitive. We're less than $6.50. There's airports in the country that are $30, $35. There's airports in our peer group that are in the $10 plus range. And that's why when we can deliver a terminal project cash at $127 million with some grant money and we don't have to go borrow debt, in order to build that translates to less cost back to the carriers. So when you look at the carriers in many markets, when you look at an airport's total revenue stream, airlines usually represent somewhere in the 35 to almost 50% of an airport's revenue stream at a lot of other airports around the country. This year we're at 18%. So just significantly more efficient from a cost perspective for the carriers. Yes?
The 11,001 foot marker seems very deliberate. Is there a story behind that, or is that?
Yeah, it was to make sure that you're absolutely the longest runway in the southeast at the time. I think it was. It was kind of like adding that foot onto the tallest building. It's just pushing it over the 1 foot. So it's longer than 11,000 feet, not just 11,000 feet. So even though we say 11,000 feet, but there wasn't any. At the time, the story goes, and obviously I wasn't here back in the era that BMW was being recruited to come here to the upstate, but BMW wanted a 13,000 foot runway. And they were finally convinced that 11,000 would do it for everything that BMW was going to need. The ironic part of that is, the runway was extended in that 99 time frame, and the first 747 or large wide-body freight airplane that came into GSP supporting BMW from an actual logistics standpoint was in 2011 after I arrived. So, but it was a good thing we had the runway because if that runway had not have been built back in that late 90, 2000 time frame, we wouldn't have had that capability. Anything else I can answer? Yes, sir.
There was some discussion years ago about an added runway. Is that still something that's in the future?
It is. If you look at this master plan, you'll see that right here. We shortened it in this master plan. So in the previous master plan, it was 8,500 feet. We shortened it to 7,000 feet in this master plan, which a lot of my colleagues kind of cringe at in the industry. Dave, why are you shortening the runway? I've taken 2 runways off of plans in my career because the demand just wasn't going to be there, when you looked at the future forecast of the airport. In this particular case, we wanted to make sure that we kept this runway on the plan, but we wanted it sized to a length that made sense, that could be supported by the actual data that we had in place. Because the reality is over the years, aircraft keep getting more efficient. They're higher performing, they're quieter, they need less runway for takeoff and landing. And so rather than seeing runways grow into the future, I think we should be seeing runways shrink in length as we go into the future. So, but that's a ways out for us. I'll give you an example. The current runway has what we call another metric in the business, an annual service volume of 200,000 annual operations. We're at a little over 50,000 annual operations today. So we're at just a little over 25% of the actual capacity of the current runway, just from an operational count standpoint. Now there could be some other reason. It could be a logistics operator that came in. It could be a major freight operation that would come in that would say, we need redundancy. We can't afford to have the runway down. If you had an incident that closed the runway for an hour and a half, we can't afford that to happen in a peak period from a logistics standpoint. So we have to have redundancy. That's typically what FedEx requires when they put in a very major operation like they did up in Greensboro. Several years ago, Greensboro had to go out and build another runway in order to meet that requirement for FedEx. Well, you've been a great crowd. Thank you. The problem, if you don't stop, I'll talk all night. So, and you don't want me doing that. But I hope you enjoyed the evening, and I hope you had a good meeting yourself tonight. And I hope the food and everything worked well, and the room worked well for you all. And you're welcome back again in the future if this suits your needs. So, thanks, and be safe driving home. It's the most dangerous place you can be. You should be in an airplane.